So, good morning, students. Today, let me start and continue the topic types of economies. So, yesterday I had discussed what is an economy, then I had discussed the types of economies, then I had discussed what are the indicators that we can consider to identify whether an economy is developed or an economy is developing economy. Then lastly, I ended up the session by including GNI, that is gross national income, as an indicator of an indicator as to whether an economy is developed one or an underdeveloped one. Underdeveloped one. But today we shall continue with the same, and in today's session we shall be discussing how to identify an economy again, whether it is developed or underdeveloped, developed or developing economy. So here we have the classification done by United Nations. According to United Nations classification, an economy can be considered as a developed or a developing economy, basing it on the indicator called per capita income. What is per capita income? Income per head is called as per capita income. So here we can identify whether an economy is developed or a developing economy, and in accordance with the UN's classification rule, we can say that per capita income is one of the important indicator of whether an economy is developed or developing one. So per capita income acts as an indicator. If the per capita income is high, then the standard of living of people in an economy is high. So that states that an economy is a developed economy. And we have countries like US, Japan, Canada, Western Europe, and some Eastern European countries which falls under this category of developed economy. So if somebody says that an economy is a developed economy, it means that per capita income of that economy is very high and the standard of living of the people is very high. Okay. On the contrary, if per capita income is lesser, it means that the country is a developing country. That is, it is underdeveloped, but it is in the process of getting developed. So we can term it as developing country. So here it indicates that a developing country has the potential for becoming a developed country. Has the potential for becoming a developed country. Now this is a very important point which you should have in your mind. So if a country's per capita income is lesser, it means it is a developing country and it has the growth potential and has the potential of becoming a developed country. Okay. Now we shall study the features of developing country. So features of developing country, the first feature is that it has a very low per capita income. It has a very low per capita income. And while understanding the features of developing countries, we need to understand one point, that potential for growth is very high. And another point which we need to remember is that the word developing, poor and underdeveloped, they are all the same. They are one and the same. No need to get confused between developing, poor and underdeveloped. So developing, poor and underdeveloped, they are all one and the same. This point I have made a mention of here in order to make you understand so that you don't get confused between developing, poor and underdeveloped. Poor, developed and developing and underdeveloped. Poor, developing and underdeveloped, they are all one and the same. Now there arises a very important question. Now, according to UN classification and according to economists, they say a country can be developed or a developing country, basing it on the indicator called per capita income. But the question arises is that is per capita income the right indicator for a right indicator or a right measure for a country's growth? The question is this. So the answer obviously is that no, it is not the right measure. It is not the right measure, or it is not the right indicator. What is not the right indicator? Per capita income is not the right indicator. Now, what are the reasons that per capita income is not the right indicator? Because distribution of income, degree of poverty, and degree of unemployment has to be considered. So, if we say that if a country's per capita income is, if we measure a country's growth based on per capita income, we are not very clear about these 3 points, that is distribution of income, degree of poverty, and degree of unemployment. If these exist, then you cannot say a country's, you cannot measure a country's growth only by per capita income. These 3 points also needs to be considered. So if in a country distribution of income is not equal, then you cannot say per capita income is the right measure. Then if the degree of poverty is very high, you cannot consider per capita income as the right measure. Then if the degree of unemployment is very high, then you cannot consider per capita income as a right measure. So we cannot say that per capita income is the right measuring rod to say whether an economy is developed or an economy is developing. Okay. Now I am coming to the features of developing countries. What are the features of developing countries? The features of developing countries are the following. It has a very low per capita income than the developed countries. So developing countries have low per capita income when compared to developed countries. Poverty is very widespread. Very widespread. Then there is high income inequalities. That is 80%, 20% of the people have 80% of the income, and 80% of the people have only 20% of the income. And furthermore, developing economy is agricultural based. It doesn't have a strong industrial infrastructure. Then high population, it is characterized by high population. Then there is low capital and low stock of capital. So low capital, low stock of capital is another feature of a developing country. Then we have poor quality of. Okay. Now I will be discussing the seventh point related to the features of developing country. The seventh point is that it has a poor quality of human resources. And why poor quality of human resources exists? Because of low literacy rate, low education, low health, lack of health facilities available. So these are the reasons for poor quality of human resources. Number 8, traditional techniques used. Developing countries, they don't go in for modern techniques. They are going for the traditional techniques only. So when traditional techniques are applied, then you don't find much of chance for increasing productivity. So traditional techniques are used. That is the 8th feature of a developing country. Then you have the 9th feature, that is there is high degree of unemployment. Then at the same time there is high degree of underemployment. What is the difference between unemployment and underemployment? Unemployment means jobless. Underemployment means that is the resources are not being effectively used, whether it is a human resource or difference between unemployment and underemployment is that in unemployment you don't have a job at all. In underemployment, the human resources are not used efficiently. That is underemployment. So unemployment and underemployment both leads to lack of productivity. So that is why I have mentioned here low productivity. So low productivity exists because of these two reasons. And then 11th factor is low living standards. Then you have low living standard. Low living standard is because of poor diet, lack of drinking water, lack of sanitation, inadequate housing facilities. These all contribute to the factor low living standards. Then low life expectancy. See, when low living standard exists, naturally life expectancy also gets reduced, and furthermore this is aggravated by high infant mortality rate. High infant mortality rate. Now this is a very serious problem existing in developing countries. Then you have lack of infrastructure. Now this is the 13th point. Lack of infrastructure. Lack of infrastructure means infrastructure is there, but it is not to the perfection. So lack of infrastructure here means lack of transportation, lack of communication, lack of power supply, lack of financial institutions like banks, etc. Lastly, lack of social structure. So when all these lacks, then there is a lack in the social structure, and it also leads to lack in value system. So for today's session, I end up till here. Thank you very much.